Hey, this is Rob. This is episode 86 of the Folly Coffee Podcast. Let's get it brewing. All right, this episode has been a long time coming. I had to cancel the last one we had set up because we just got swamped in a week, and I was so bummed out because I think you have an absolutely incredible story. I'm here with Kate Meier of BA Craftmade Aprons. Welcome to the Folly Coffee Podcast.
Hey, Rob. I'm really excited. I'm really excited.
So I am obsessed with products that are in categories where you go, how is one business or one person excelling beyond what you could possibly imagine? And you started a business in aprons. Yeah. And I think if you approached any person and said, are you interested in starting a business within aprons? People would go, why would I do that? That seems kind of just like whatever the cheapest option is or whatever is
killing me.
You know what I mean? Like
I love it.
Yeah, it's one of those categories.
I would have been the person saying that because I did say that when my son came to me.
Exactly.
100%.
And you go, I mean, things like clothing or aprons,
Yeah.
you just kind of assume that these huge companies have just a stranglehold on that market.
Yeah.
And you go, what could I possibly do differently that would cause somebody to want to buy mine over just a much cheaper mass-produced item?
Everything you're saying is kind of what I said when my son came to me. My first son came to me, and he was on this whole idea that his sibling, bought this $120 apron, which he called canvas with strings, is what my son said. He was like, it's just this thing like that. And then he spilled beet juice on it like the first day, and it's done. It's ruined. It's garbage. And he said he spent that much money, and you know how hard he works to make that money. And he thought he was so cool. And then that happened. And he goes, we got to do something better. So I was like, well, it's like just everything you said. I'm thinking in my head, well, an apron, like I've never even thought about that. I'm like, are you serious? You seriously want me to spend time with you figuring out an apron? And he's like, yeah, we need to do something better. So I do have some knowledge on fabrics. And
well, so let's get back to let's set the scene here.
Why?
Yeah, leading up to this, because if someone approached me with this, I'd be like, I don't know, I'll go find a better one.
Yeah.
So what was your background to him even thinking to approach you in the first place, right? Because that's kind of important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, so I grew up youngest of 8, had my mom, my parents were Depression era people. So they hard work and do stuff yourself, and that's even with me cooking and my kids all cooking. We cook from scratch. So those things are what we do. We just make and do things. So me being, I think I started sewing when I was like 3. So I was really, really little. And so not great supervision. I had access to all this stuff, and I would just do it. So I would make things, and not with patterns. I would just look at something and be like, this is what we do. And I was successful, at a young age. When I was 17 or 18, I started my own brand of skate pants called Skate Rage. So I made those, and I was selling them at a skate shop called the Alt. So, and CalSurf. So I just did it. I never thought it out really. I was like, I have cool friends that are skateboarding. We make some cool pants. So I did that and sold them, and that was cool and fun. Then I think when I was in my late 20s, because I'd go to First Avenue on the weekends, was my thing. But I made all my own clothes. And First Ave, I was good friends with most people there. They approached me and said, hey, would you ever have a fashion show here on a Saturday night? So I just did that. So on a Saturday night, the club was packed. I had I don't even know how many people. It was quite a range of people. Men and women, but I had men in suits and trench coats and women in amazing cool stuff. And so we did that, and it was just one night, and it was fun and cool. And then that was just done. But so I just kind of, if an opportunity presents itself, I'll just do it. Yeah. So my kids knew that I had those skills, but honestly, I'm not a fan of sewing. I don't want to sit. It was not a hobby that I'm hanging out sewing, but if there's a cool thing and I can create and design and build something amazing, I'm in.
The way you casually dropped that you had a fashion show at First Avenue, by the way, because to put that in perspective, First Avenue, if you're from Minnesota, you know it, but you probably are aware of it if you're into the music scene at all. It became outrageously famous when Prince filmed Purple Rain, the music video for Purple Rain there, and it's just an institution that it's like every band and every musician's dream to have a show at First Avenue.
It's
and
amazing.
Here you are, like, oh yeah, I make some
clothes.
It
was so amazing. They had platforms all throughout the dance floor that we had models on for a while, and then we did this amazing thing on the stage. Like, it was, if I look back on it, I'm like, that was pretty damn legit, because it was probably at that point the coolest thing. I was like, this is the coolest thing I'll ever do. You know, like you are back in the green room or whatever they call it. So we had that, we had makeup and hair, and it was just amazing. So you're right. It was very cool. It was really cool. I think one of my other goals is maybe to get my name in one of those stars, because I know what you have to do. You have to have had an event there, and then you have to, their committee decides who gets to be, and I'm like, I should be able to do that.
You'd definitely be the first person that started in the apron industry to have a star on First Ave. And so that makes sense that your son is like, this apron's garbage. I spilled juice on it, and it's ruined, which seems crazy to think about, that I'm a chef, I spilled juice on it, and now it's ruined. So he comes to you, and what's your first step? Like, what are you thinking that, okay, how can I start to design a better apron?
I think my first thoughts were like fabric. So we want a fabric that's going to be, you don't want to use a bunch of chemicals to remove stains, because that just breaks down fabric. So I started looking at different military grade fabrics. So I went that route, learning about different fabrics that are just going to hold up well, but are going to be comfortable. And so the process went that route with fabrics, but then it was also pocket layout and design. What tools do you use? What are the most common things that people use? So I think that it took us about probably just only like 4 different shots at getting the pocket layout that's set now that everybody wants. And I'm always like, I can encourage them, if you want any changes, we can do that. So here we are now. I'm working with full restaurants. Like, what would you like? And we like that one that we're all wearing. So pocket layout, we stayed with that. Then I went to the crossback. So there's like,
you keep jumping
levels.
Wildly ahead here. I like to dissect. This is
how I am.
I like to dissect steps.
You're going to rein me in. You're like the first person I know that can do this.
All right. So this is going to be my task today.
I'm going to keep you with me.
You're jumping from my son needed help with an apron to I'm selling to restaurants. Yes. So you bring your son. So you make your apron, or you make your apron for your son.
Yeah.
And he starts wearing that.
Yeah.
At this point, did you have the idea that I'm going to make? I made that apron. This is a business now.
Oh,
Let's go.
No, never. I still don't think that way. Isn't that weird? No, I've never thought that way. What I did was I just made them, and that's even how the logo started. I wanted something that just made it look cool, because I didn't want it to look like, if I'm going to put any time and energy in it, and like we did leather trim, it was pretty cool. So I'm like, we're going to put something on there so it just looks like you've got a legit product. So my first ones were just the state of Minnesota, because I'm like, that's, it's where we're from. It's cool. Put that on there. And then I think just that little white patch became like really like, people are like, where'd you get that? It wasn't just like bland and basic. We had some cool different little things on it. So all 3 of my boys started wearing them. And then when we came up with that crossback design, because that was like, I literally spent probably a week just trying to figure out, how can I make this so it's a crossback but stays fit, and you can adjust it so it's universal. Because one of my kids was having migraines and neck problems, and they weren't even associating with that was from the apron pulling on their neck all day for 18 hours and all the crap they put in their pockets.
The crossback being that the straps that go over the shoulders, which traditionally just go straight up and down and then ties in the back. You have it so that it crosses across the back, so it kind of moves more with you.
Yeah, so there's no neck strain. And so I was thinking, what can we do to just pull that weight off? And then I would wear these while I'm making them. How do I feel about it? And it was like, if I went back and forth, I didn't want to go back to that other one, which is where we're at now too as a brand. We have one on our website that's a loop neck. Mm-hmm. They're not selling. People want that crossback, and I offer it as an option. If you want that, we could convert. I don't like to, but no. So that's what we do, is just that. So they started wearing it, people were watching it. Then one of my sons gifted a couple to his friend, like just a little over 3 years ago. So just about that time, The one friend gets it, and he got in a text immediately. He's like, this is like the best thing I've ever had. And at that point, like the fabrics were like a lightweight military cotton. And this kid's like, I have to have these. Can your mom make me some more? So I made like 6, and I brought them, and he bought all of them. And then his team were seeing those, and they're like, we got a text like a few days later. We have more friends that would like some more of these. So I'm thinking, well, that's cool, but do I want to sit and spend all day doing this? So I was sort of like in this mindset of, I don't really know if I want to do like that. I don't know. God, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, because at that point, you're not even in a business mindset. You're just it's your son's friends.
This is my dining room table, my kitchen counters, and I've got stuff all over. Because, like, for me, I'm very creative, and I like to have access and see what I'm doing, and everything's kind of everywhere. And my sewing machine and all this stuff. So it really started occupying a bunch of space. And I was at that second or third trip to this kitchen. They were like, show up, and there's like 3 chefs now in this place. And they were like, literally like rifling through, calling dibs on what I made. And I was like, this is such a weird experience for me. Because like for me, I'm thinking, you're actually into what I just made. That's blowing my mind. And I think it's kind of cool and fun at the same time. Like, this is, whoa. So then they said, do you think that you could start an Instagram? And then, like, you would post pictures of what you made so that we can see it for, like, next time you come. And once I did that, then it just, like, blew up to, like, I don't even know. Like, this is crazy. And that's how I met Yia, because he saw it. And I started getting DMs. And I don't use Instagram. So literally think of what I like to say is, prior to this, say that I was literally plucked from my garden. I was raising kids, taking care of my mom, and gardening. So I was like, I didn't do stuff like this. This is like, I didn't go out to eat. I don't even know people in the restaurant. So when, like, you have, like, I got an email from I got an email from Tim McKee. I got, like, these emails from people that are like, can you make me aprons? Can we talk about what you've got going on? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, when I can fit it into my
And it's crazy
schedule.
to hear about that now, because now it's at the point that you just see them everywhere, and it's almost built for Instagram. And the fact that it just looks so much cooler. I've only had one job where I had to wear I had a barista job where I had to wear an apron, and I hated it for the reasons that you're talking about. First of all, it didn't look cool, and so I felt super tacky wearing it. And ironically, the reason you wore it is because they were supposed to look fancy. And it had the straps that, you know, it didn't fit on my neck. They don't design barista aprons for former football players. And so I've got the strap falling off all day, and all of a sudden I just noticed that my shoulders are up at my neck. And then all of a sudden on this side, you've got all these iconic chefs and everybody wanting to post about them. And the thing that cracks me up about it is, like, now you see when people have photo shoots, they're like, no, I got to make sure I'm wearing my BA Craftmade apron. Like, I got to have this apron. And the other thing that they have probably never been approached with, well, what do you want on your apron? How do you want things angled? Yeah. So talk about an industry where I show up as a barista. They're like, here's the apron, $40 deposit. If you don't return it, we keep that money. And so I'm like, I'm in kind of paying for this apron that I don't want. To the other side, you're coming to them, well, what do you want? What pockets do you want? What material would be better so that it has longevity, but is also built to what you want? And then the minor detail of the crossback, which solves so many of the things that suck about wearing an apron. And
it's also the cooler part, too, and restaurants started catching on to it, that we can have different color straps. And so even from the back, say you want to wear a green T-shirt, and you have, like, gold straps because those are your colors, that's going to pop from the back side as well. So you're going to look cool front or back. So that they started catching on to those pieces. It was kind of like they were letting me know all these cool things that they thought I spent all this time thinking about, but I really didn't. It was, like, collaborative totally. Like, you let me know what you want. I want to work with you. And I think it got, like, some of the details and pieces that were really cool for me in the beginning was that I would have chefs gifting these to other chefs that they really cared about. And I think that there's a chef out in Washington, and she was gifted one, and apparently she's this amazing, very known chef, but I don't know who's known or cool or not.
I was just about to ask that. So someone like Yi Vang approaches you, you know, just recently featured on Bon Appetit magazine, and one of the most well-known chefs in Minnesota is like, hey, could you make me one? Yeah. Is that, do you know who's approaching you, or is this just another message?
I never knew. So I didn't know. But the thing is I'd go on, it was weird also for me to go and meet people, because I didn't do that. I was a mom at home, and I really just didn't do much. I hung out at home. I did my jam. So going out and meeting these people, it was all, I just felt like I was I don't know, I still like to think of it as extended family then, because I think of it as my kids' friends. So everybody kind of is in that category as like my kids' friends, and we were sort of that house where all my kids' friends would be. And I cooked all the time, and so it was always like, we always had people. So I always see this more as like just more family. It's just how I even am more comfortable with the growth and what we're doing. And so I learned about people. I learned stories about them. The chef out in Washington, when she found out about that I could custom make aprons, her story is like so dear to me, is that she mailed me out her mom's skirt that her mom would wear when she was little. And I find out that her mom passed from cancer like 4 or 6 years prior to her opening this restaurant that's so successful. And so she asked if I could take pieces of that skirt and build it into the apron for her. And it was like the coolest. Her apron turned out mind-blowing, which is awesome. And it's not like I'm saying I'm amazing, but it was the depth of emotion that went into that, because she tells me when she gets it, she's like, I feel like I have my mom like right next to my heart all day long. And for her culture, family, and food is like huge. So for her to have that, it was like kind of blew my mind, right? That meant that much to her. She took it to the next level, and she has a mentee out in Dallas, and he lost his mom. And she stopped into his restaurant in Dallas, flew to Minnesota because she was coming here, gave me this fabric. I made him an apron. He was literally like in the top, whatever, how many restaurants in Bon Appetit last year. He was number 2 or something. But so he's like wearing the apron because he's like never takes it off. So everything he's photoed, and he was all over the news because his story is so cool. Well, there's our apron, and that tag is so identifiable that you can see that that's ours. And it's just cool that people care about that.
You took every single aspect of what is now your business could be a business on its own. You could have had someone come along and be like, aprons are boring, let's make them cool and customizable. That on its own, and just like the fabric choice could be its own business. You've got, hey, aprons kind of suck, let's make it so that they like the back of them fits better, that you don't have a sore back from the heavy things you have in your pockets all day. Right. That could be its own business. And then just the story. A lot of people will buy something just if it's authentic and has a story, that you made it for your son first and that's how it grew. But you've got all of these things combined into one thing that's like, everybody might be buying it for a different reason.
Yeah.
I might be buying it because I like the fabric and the cool color choices, but then I get it and I go, oh, this is amazing. And that's where you get like this ravenous word of mouth happening. Is they're like, everything about this is so much cooler. And oddly enough, the business that came to mind when I was thinking about Craftmade aprons is Dyson, if you're familiar. They are, they're the ones that they take products like vacuum cleaners, and they're like, could this be way better? Yep. And then they design it in a way that's not only better, but it looks way cooler. And like the hand dryers that you've seen, they have the Dyson hand dryers that you're like, why would somebody redo hand dryers? But what they do is they look at things and they go, could the design be more efficient and better, but also we want it to look really cool and attractive in things that people don't think of that way.
Absolutely.
So in a weird way, this like tech and design company is kind of what you're doing is you took a product that people go, it doesn't need to be better. Yeah. It doesn't need to be customizable. And you've changed it to this emotional connection that people have. And that's probably one of the main reasons that people are like, I need to be photographed in this because it has a story personal to me. I chose the pockets, the design. Yep. And so at what point does it go from the kitchen table that you're like, I guess I'll keep making them. It's my son's friends. I want to do them a favor. And you're like, this is kind of a lot of work. But again, you know, it's friends and family. So I'll continue to do it. At what point does it go from the kitchen table to you go, I think I need to take this more seriously, not that you weren't taking the work seriously, but from a business sense and like, you know, incorporating or forming an LLC and building it into like an actual business structure?
I think it was probably, so end of December is when I started going to kitchens. And then I would say by March, I was a business. Like, it was really fast. And it was like, I started getting requests for full restaurants almost immediately. Like, I did Parlor Bar and I did 925, like that came right away. And I was panicked. I was for a while, wouldn't look at my emails and I didn't want to look at DMs. Like, I still sometimes will have a little anxiety if we have a post and it just makes me nervous. And it's weird because like most people are like, that's amazing. You should be so excited. And I'm like, I know like it is now, but back then it was just me sitting at a sewing machine for like 14 hours a day, every day, and not knowing like, how am I going to continue doing this? Cause like, I'm not in the best shape for this. I don't think I can. And it went almost like, I think in March we filed as an LLC, but so what happened was Yia takes one of the aprons to Lowry Hill Meats. And he was like, Eric, you got to check these out. And I got an email from Eric that day. And he's like, we would sell these here. If you want to do that, we'd love it. And I made like 5 or 6. And he had this cool rack that he built for me. And we put it up on the wall. And that, it's like every step just made it grow bigger. So I feel like almost immediately I was shipping out to other states, which to me like was like, holy cow. You're like I would get anxiety because every time I ship something out somewhere, like their friends would want it. And then I get more inquiries from them. And it was to like the point where I was like, I'd have to ask my son, do you know about this place? He'd be like, holy shit, what?
Exactly.
That place is reaching out to you? Oh my God. And I'm like, are they cool? And he's like, yeah, that's amazing. So it
just, even as you're naming names right now, I'm like, those are one of the first places to reach out to. I was like, people work so hard to be associated with these places. Like Parlor is a great example, just to have an association with them, let alone have them knocking on your door being like, we need what you're making.
Yeah, I have and that was the part for me where like I'd meet people and I'd know they're cool immediately because I was like, I just appreciate and admire people and I learned stories. But it was like Jorge met me at Lowry Hill and was like, do you want to do something cool with me? And
Jorge Guzman.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I sit with people and I learn about them for a few minutes and I'm like, you're amazing. Yeah, I want to make you something. So you kind of learn about the person. When I was doing those meetings like that, I would learn about the person. I would literally make them an apron from who I thought they were. And also that's when I started doing different sizes because I'd look at somebody, I'm like, you need something like different. So now we have 4 sizes for an apron, which is like we get hit so hard with orders for our XL size aprons. Because if you have a pitmaster who's, over 6 feet tall and, 400 pounds, a regular apron is not even good at all. So where we've hit that market has been huge. I have a chef he's 7 feet tall in Texas. He's never had an apron that fits him. And so he's sent me pictures of himself and he's just like the happiest person in the world, right? And I'm just blown away that wasn't offered. So we've got all those different pieces coming together and people are reaching out and having us at Lowry kind of took it next level. And then I met who is now my business partner, but this guy, Trent, was like, emails me and he said, I'd like to buy some aprons from you. And I'm like, cool, I need like a week. What do you want? And he's like, just 4 like you did in that picture with Lowry. So I make him the aprons and we meet. And he said, like, if you'd like some help, because he said, I don't know if you realize what a cool thing you're doing. And I think you're going to need some help with this, like in the bigger picture.
Well, he identified something correctly because word of mouth is so difficult to generate. It's so hard to get anyone to know anything about what you've done. and you planted this seed in the middle of a community that is very particular. If you want to talk about chefs, especially the chefs at the places you're talking about, they don't just go, oh, this is cool, I'm going to tell my friend about it. They're going to go through every part of the apron and be like, oh my gosh, I actually love this. But if they're going to suggest something to their other friends that are at that same level of chef, it's kind of their reputation in a small way on the line when they go, if I'm suggesting this, it better be perfect.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to suggest something to another person that's a professional unless it's at such a level that it's going to make me look good in doing it too. Yep. And so to have it in the middle of this community and have it growing in that way, it sounds like at the beginning, it's just keeping up was an issue. And so to stumble upon Trent, who then kind of identified that goes, hey, if you need help. I'm curious what his background is, where he came to you and started asking, do you need help in growing this?
Well, his family is in the food service. So they're like, I try not to even know or think about that he has another job because it's pretty important and it requires a lot of time. I like to think of him as only like Trent of Craftmade, but his family business is Taher. So they're like, his last name is the name of the company. So it's like that level of cool. He's got that, and it's food service, so he knows all about this stuff. I meet someone and I can tell if they're interested in what we're doing and helping me get to, and I didn't know I wanted to do this as a business, but what I thought of when I was seeing this happen, I thought that I had an opportunity to provide something for what my kids were asking for, something that's awesome but affordable. So my main focuses were, how do we do this and keep in a price point that can work for them? But then also the bigger piece that I wanted that was really important on like our second meeting, I talked to him about this. I said, I want to be able to have a part of this give back to them because I know the challenges. I've watched my kids for 18 years, in the industry, and I know they generally don't have health insurance. They don't have, the pay is really poor, especially if you're, starting prep cook, dishwasher. So why can't they be cool too? Why can't they have a cool apron? So my focus was then on, can you help me do those things? And so like the intensity and how things came at me and that I'm so inexperienced with this and the level of stress I was feeling because I want to do all of it. He's been there to balance and kind of be an anchor because, like, the inquiries that we had, I don't even know who anybody is. So I'd be asking him, too. I'm like, so I had someone reach out on our Instagram that was a chef from Nome. Then he said he got one of our aprons and he loved it. And I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool because you're, like, in a whole nother country. And I'm like, Trent, what do you think of this? And he was like, holy, what's going on? And so it was just, it grew so fast with such cool people, but for me, everybody's cool. I mean, everybody's kind of on a very equal playing field because I don't know anybody and I don't know where they're from, so everybody. And like, I would meet with somebody who's a prep cook, but that just really wants to be part of whatever this cool thing is going on. And to me, I appreciate that person just as much as, the chef in Philly who's got the most amazing restaurant who also heard about us and wants to be part of this team.
That also probably adds to the success of it. I love this book. It's called The Challenger Salesman, and it's just a book about. It was supposed to highlight just in the 2008 recession. They followed people who were having success as a salesperson despite the recession. And what they found is that, it wasn't just success during the recession. It was success at all times in sales. And one thing they found across all these different salespeople was that they treated everyone the same, no matter who they were selling to. Because you never know who is going to be the person that ends up being a great customer. But even on the other side, it's just in not qualifying everybody before talking to them, they would just find more success overall. And so almost because you didn't know, and you're being approached by people, it's unfortunately for you, the same level of anxiety. It sounds like in the early stage, it's the same level of anxiety of any order you're getting, but everybody's going to be treated the same. And I think chefs especially like to be the ones that discover things. Yeah. So it's like if I were to have started Craftmade aprons, I would have been reaching out to them and they would have been like, why are you contacting me about aprons? I don't want to talk to you. But because they found you and starting the conversation, that's another thing that like that cool factor you can't make up. Yeah. You can't manufacture that. And I would not be the person that would be able to start it because I lack cool in the sense of like, I'm always reaching out and I'm going to be the one bothering you, knocking on your door every day. And you're going to be, maybe you end up getting it and be like, oh, this is actually good versus on your end. They're going out and telling everyone for you, which is incredible. So what are those first steps you take when Trent comes on board and you've just got an overwhelming number of orders coming in? The word is catching on fire and the orders just keep streaming in. What are those first steps you do to kind of streamline the business to be able to keep up with the demand?
So we're still, I think I would say today we are sort of at a place where we can keep up with demand, but it took a very long time to find because we wanted it to be produced here. I had people that would come to me that were super wealthy that would be like, let me work with you. Let me come on board. I'll just make 1 million of these over a season. Then we'll just like, everybody wants them. So, and you got a cool story. Like I felt like I was going to be like, I didn't like the way people were wanting to take that and change any aspect. So for me with Trent, he let me work with, like we stayed within what I felt comfortable with, right? There wasn't like, let me blow you up and we're going to do all these crazy things. We worked together. We were putting out feelers. Does anybody know any sewers? So we started and we had one person that was sewing along with me. So they were in their home sewing and we'd give them orders. I'd cut everything and send her what we needed. And that was sort of a little bit helpful. But it, like I'm saying, every time it was like the more stuff went out, the more orders would come in. And for me, I would just then have super anxiety, especially if we were sending stuff over. Like we're going to send stuff to Boston. We're going to do a full restaurant in Boston. And it's a really legit restaurant. And now I'm having more anxiety because I'm scared to even ship it out. I'm having so much stress because here we go. And then we had to find more manufacturing. So we had a couple manufacturers that were bigger, but they weren't producing the quality. Like, so I had standards. I don't want the pockets to come off or tear. I want that logo's on there and people want to be seen in it and it's identifiable. That's literally it's like I made it then. So I have to have those standards. There was one manufacturer that wasn't up to that par level at all. And I like to think I'm a super kind person and I'm very like, I want to understand what's going on or why, but they couldn't bring it up to where I needed it. And I will never forget this day. This guy got so mad at me. He said, you're never going to be successful because you can't accept anything that should be, like, you should be able to accept this. You're mass producing something. You can't have it at your level that you want. Your quality standards are too high. You're not going to succeed. And so I almost took that as, like, more reason, like, okay, well, now I'm going to show you because, look, like, these are the reasons why it has to be that good. I don't want to, like, drop my level of what my standards are. Like, I can't do that. So we worked really hard to find the right people. And I feel more so if you learn those lessons a little bit and you're willing to stick to your values and be open that maybe something better is out there, it does show up. So all those things that are cliche or whatever are out there, it's true. So we kept staying our course. Days when either of us were really frustrated or having a hard time with what we were trying to do, try to rally, keep each other in it, and then keep going forward. We found a team that was the coolest. One of the coolest pieces about what we do is that some of our sewers, their husbands are maybe dishwashers or prep cooks in the industry, so they know this industry. They also, some of them were excited because they already knew of the brand. So we got a team of people who are like, we want to work with you, and they're really skilled. And I also learned that there are some manufacturing for sewing that they don't pay their sewers what it's worth. And when I find out what sewers are actually getting paid, like for larger manufacturing in Minnesota, I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's hard work, really, really hard work. And I totally feel their pain. And if you're not going to I feel like it's a respect, right?
And it's like, dude, it's going back to that guy. It's like, well, dude, the reason people are talking about it, one is because we have these insanely rigid standards for what we do. And the second you start to slide on that, and the second you start to hand those responsibilities off to other people where you don't have complete control over the manufacturing process with something that is so focused like this, then you're going to be more like that apron I got when I was a barista. And like, yeah, it might look nice from afar, but wearing it sucks. It doesn't feel good. And then like the utility of it and the way the pockets are angled, like nothing really makes sense about it. And then every pastry you serve, you know, the crumbs break off, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day, you've got a pocket full of nasty crumbs, and you have to wash it every shift because grease and butter forms at the bottom of it. And then on the other side is they're looking at it being like defining the success by margins and like purely by margins and profitability and scalability. But when you look, just hearing what you said there is like, yeah, but you're assuming all these margins based on established hourly wages, established salaries, on industries that are not paying enough for what people are doing. And the reason that work is not done well is because you're assuming on these like wages that you're not going to get a good enough quality paying that much, because you're not going to get people that are going to A, want to do it, or B, people that are skilled enough to do it. Or you're going to try to find people that aren't skilled and teach them how to do your way, which is cheaply made.
Yeah.
And the third part is like, now you're building jobs for people that are going to be happy for what they're doing. And it's like more fulfilling work than just working in a manufacturing facility, receiving a massive order, fulfilling it, and then going on to the next massive order that came through. So there's just like so many special things going on. And it's like the old, I don't know anything about investing, but I read this article about like what types of companies do people start approaching. And it's the Warren Buffett rule of natural exponential growth. So it's just organic exponential growth, meaning that it's not like a paid advertising campaign that can be attributed for this growth. It's just natural growth that continues up in that exponential fashion.
What you're saying, exactly what happens. And I think that the part that is endearing to me is I feel like every person that's purchased one of our aprons, they feel like they've built this. So this brand, I feel like, is everybody's brand. It belongs to everybody that's wearing these and that's supporting it. And they like, I know that I'm an unusual person. I'm kind of all over the map, and that's how I've just been. And I think at my age, I've accepted who I am, and I think that there are so many people that have embraced that about me. And the fact that there are people that I've had, even in the other manufacturers that weren't awesome, but they'd say, you actually stop and listen to me, and you see me. And for even someone in the kitchen, having a dishwasher person or something, if you stop and listen to them for a minute, just like, where are you from? Or they say what they want to tell you a little story about their family or something that's not even about food. But the fact that you stop for them for a second, I didn't realize how important that is to somebody. It's just like, I find that interesting just to hear who they are. Like, you're cool. Tell me about you. What's going on? Like, even if you're an apron person, what could I do to make what your job is doing? What could I make it a little bit better? Even just to get a little nugget from there, and I'll think about it and maybe use it later, maybe not. But it's that part that you stop for a minute and just observe and listen. That I found is people feel like you care. Like, I'm invested in them, and I think people get that. And that's the part that makes me feel like there's a certain level of respect that I have with this job to give back, and to like, I want that essence of who I am to continue to be with this as we grow. And so that part of us having Project Black and Blue and those segments of the business that are giving back, one of the sewers had said that knowing that we're working with that and that their husband's a dishwasher, but that we're giving back to the community if someone needs it, like, they're all in then. They're like totally all in.
And the last part about the manufacturers would be like the irony of approaching someone with the name Craftmade Aprons and being like, we should take this overseas. We could do this a lot cheaper. You're like it's literally in our name, dude. Like, we're not going to do this. Like, Craftmade is literally what we're all about.
Yeah.
And so tell me about Project Black and Blue, because I first became familiar with this when we were buying aprons for the tasting and tour room. And I was unaware of it, but I love what you said. And I think this is something that's important for any business to consider is like, yeah, you made the product, But if you're growing as a business, it's because people are supporting you with their money. That I like to think of dollars and money as people work hard to earn money
100%.
And they spend time on that. So to spend money, especially on a quality product, like I consider our coffee to be expensive coffee, but we really put care into what we do. So every time someone purchases, in a way, they're spending a portion of their life, a portion of their time on what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And so I look at growth of a business like yours as people are willing to invest their time and their money into what you're doing. And to have that perspective that I think a lot of people in your position would be like, this is all me. Like, we did this. We're growing. This is crazy. Let's go. And you're looking at it like, this is still my son's friends and their friends and their friends that are the ones that can be attributed to the success of this business. And the way you listen to people probably explains some of the product line extensions you've had. And then the word gets out that like, hey, she's willing to work with you if there's something that could be done better. But I want to get back to that. But the Project Black and Blue, I'd love to hear when you first started that project and kind of what it means to you.
Yeah. So I think as a whole, if you think about one of the stories is like when my oldest, he was 21, he had melanoma. And that's one of the most aggressive cancers, right? And he didn't have insurance. And we didn't know for sure that that's what he had, but we're pretty certain. So we're like, you've got to go in. And he said, well, in 3 weeks, my job will have insurance will kick in. Those are 30 days, and then he'll have insurance. And I'm like, I just don't feel like you can wait. So he went in finally after a week. I got him to go in. I told him we'd be there to help him out if you needed it. He was already stage 3-4. They said if he would have waited those extra several weeks, he would have probably been a stage 4, and that cancer is aggressive. It would have been in his lymph nodes. This would have been very serious. I'll never forget how that felt, just as like knowing that someone would put their life on a line, and they like, how many dollars is your life worth is what I was saying to him. Like, what is it worth to you? I'll be there to give that. But thinking there are other people that are making choices like that don't maybe have family that could help them out, and that they're going to wait or find a job that maybe will have insurance, and how long until I can actually have that insurance kick in to help me. So that part, I can't stop thinking about that piece as I'm learning about this is going to be a growing thing. Okay, I probably have a business. It took me a long time before I even said this is a business. So I'm just doing this thing. I'm helping people and making stuff. So I'm thinking about that. And as I'm meeting these people that I think are so cool and continue relationships with them, I think of that person in the back of my mind. But like, what if they don't have insurance? And what if they have a problem and they need help? So that was where this piece of like, I didn't want to make it so like a percentage of each apron sale would go into a fund, because then I'd have to raise prices. Defeats the purpose of what I want to do. So we came up with the idea of creating one apron that 50% of that goes into a fund, so we can at least cover costs on making the sewers pay them well. Then take and build this fund, and then someone can just email in. You don't have to have a reason, or not there's just a nomination, and we're not going to exploit you. We just want to get money to you. We want to help you out. We know what your struggles could be. Maybe you can't pay rent, whatever the thing is. So we had that going on. I spoke with a chef in Philly, Eddie Conrad, one of my favorite people, and his custom apron was black with purple. And I was like, what is that? I would never pick you with those colors. And he said, for me, at the level of chef that I am, like, I know all the bruising that it took to get here, and nobody else knows that. But for me, this signifies the bruising that it took. So then that stuck with me as I'm talking to my partner. I'm like, I think what we do is we just make a black apron with blue straps. It's identifiable front or back. You see it, you know what it is. So we have Project Black and Blue, have that apron, build that, have the funds go. Like that, in that first year that we did that, we raised $54,000 that went back into the community. And we don't always share who we're helping, how we're helping them, or what we're doing. And maybe we should do more of that. But on the other hand is like, if you're struggling to pay rent, do you want someone to come in and say, hey, I am helping you and let me share your story. No, you want to be able to help that person. And then just maybe down the road, they can pay it forward when they're doing well. Some of the stories that are incredible, it's just, we had the coolest part is sometimes having a chef nominate someone. We sent funds out to Colorado. He gave the funds. He brought it himself to the restaurant to help them out. And he emailed us back and he said that being able to do that himself, so he's the vehicle, he's giving it to them. He said, I'm a former suicide survivor, and for me, Project Black and Blue as a whole, that you care about us like that makes him feel better. But he's like, to be able to have that moment to give that, and it's from the industry, it's like built by the industry. It's not like Craftmade is writing you a check. It was like really powerful. So it's those things, it's those moments that the people are feeling for themselves. And it's like, we don't need recognition, or we don't need to be like, look what we're doing for you. That for me is like, it makes me want to keep going every day. So the bigger Craftmade gets, the more I'm thinking, the more help we can do in that way, that direction. Yeah,
and just knowing that if someone did nominate someone, that it wouldn't require putting that person on blast for being in a tough spot, because nobody's ever going to be proud of being in that spot of having to seek out that help. And sometimes when you do that, well, just X amount of percentage of every sale, you go, okay, well, you know, is that just so that you can sell it to more people and use that story and whatever it may be? And so to continue to that in such a personal way without it making anyone feel like they're exposed, or that because they're in a tough position now, I have to give up some dignity to be able to survive.
Exactly. And this industry is so proud anyhow, and they're such hard workers, and they're caregivers, caretakers themselves. What are they doing? Is their job is in hospitality. They're making other people feel good. Their job is that. So for them to ask for help, it's just not something they like to or want to do. So we didn't want to have them feel that way.
So now you're in this, even since I've last visited in Northeast, you're now in an even larger space in Northeast. And when I came by to pick up our aprons, which was, I mean, well before, it was like last summer at least, because that's when the tasting room opened, you hinted that you're like, these are some aprons and some things we're it's in very initial stages here. We're kind of trying to concept some things for U.S. foods. Mm-hmm. We're hoping that maybe they'll consider us for a line they're looking to put out. And then I see, it must have been a couple of weeks ago now, the official announcement that you are now the official supplier of U.S. foods for their aprons and their chefs.
Aprons and chef coats nationally, yeah.
So now you're supplying U.S. foods. And this is where it gets crazy to me, because you look at a product like what you're doing and you go, okay, it's very, very cool. Chefs love it, this word of mouth chefs thing. But when you look at somebody like U.S. Foods, when you get to that size of business, they don't care about cool. Like, yes, we want it to be cool, but like, it's got to be really, really good, and it's got to make sense financially for us to want to partner with somebody on a national scale like that. And when I go back to talking about the multifaceted thing you've got going on with your business of why it's working, is for someone to like U.S. Foods to be interested is incredible to me, because you've got something that's both cool, and someone like U.S. Foods is going to want to carry it and have it as their uniform nationally. I'd love to hear how that conversation started and what they approach you with of what their needs are, because that's a very interesting conversation to me as such a large-scale business approaching a small quality maker about their potential uniforms.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, to be honest. So they came to us just to purchase some aprons for an event. They're gonna do some big event, and so they purchased these aprons. And when they were in there, we're like, "Hey, do you think you could ever make chef coats?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, we don't, but we definitely could. I'm sure we could." And they were telling us how they were having concerns with what they had, and that they wanted to have women be thought of more in like different sizes that actually fit and look good. And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I can try. I'll do it." And I already had some idea of what we were working on a little bit. We were kind of toying around with this. So it was like perfect timing for that. Seeing what they had and what they were working with was like, I get why they wanted something different. And there's so many pieces to the depth of challenges that we had with that. But the part that a company like that did come to us, and they've got I think it was more than 70 different clothing or apparel brands trying to get them as a contract.
Yeah, it's not like this request for a proposal is going unheard by any other supplier.
They've got a whole bunch of people approaching them. They came to us, and I was like, I try to not think about that. So I try to put it back in that perspective of more family that would like cooler things. So I just really sat down with this idea with them and said, they brought in a bunch of chefs into our little, you didn't even see our first shop. It was tiny. It was really little. So we've moved 3 times in this year. So they came to our first shop, and my mind was blown that they would come to that shop and they'd think about that with us. And they talked about what their problems were. They talked about what they'd like to see. And one of the bigger things is like, we want to be able to wash this and put it on, like not have it only look nice the first time you get it. We want to be able to wash it and look good and not be teased at a big event because it doesn't look like we ironed our stuff when we sat there and spent an hour trying to iron this and make it look good. So, I'm wearing it now. Like, I've wore one since I started the project. So I started wearing it just to test it out, and then I don't not wear it. So it's kind of almost weird if I'm not, because I got used to all the cool pockets and things. But so when we made the sample and working with them and what do you like, what you don't, what are your needs? It was that approach with this team of new family members that I could help. And fabrics were important. Stretch we wanted, fit we wanted. We have men's and women's, 7 sizes of each. We're going to add 2 more sizes, so we're going to have 9 sizes of per, and they fit good. And the time that it took to work in all those pieces was a lot, because I don't know if some of the sizes were thought about and women were not definitely thought about. But can I think of you wearing this all day and feeling good? That's my main goal. So I wore it all summer out in the heat. Like, I'd even do, if I got to do a little outdoor chores, or I'd go to the fabric store. I'm wearing this thing. I'm beating it up. How does it wash? How does it wear? What's it like after? We didn't make much of a change from the initial design. So I have like non-stretch behind here and stretch on the outside so that it holds its structure. And that if you dry it on high, it's not going to shrink. You have to think about all those details. And then there's the other aspect of sewing's going into this. Every seam that I put into the thing, I have to think about all those details because it needs to be affordable. I don't want a $3,000 coat. I want something that someone can afford. So all those pieces, you're continually thinking and breaking it down and changing it. And we send them a sample, and they're almost like immediately, yes, we're in. And we started having meetings, and my anxiety went from like, I used to be anxious if I was going to go and meet a chef in his restaurant, but now we're having a meeting with these executives, and I'm like terrified. But then getting to talk with them, I was like, oh, cool. Okay, it's just more cool people that I get to talk to that are interested in what we're doing. So there's this whole other, I'm relaxed, and now you share with me what I can do for you. And I think the part that was cool working with them is they were interested in growing us. They wanted to help us. They were interested in what we were doing and why we were doing it. What was the reason for it? And like, for that was like, okay, I'm in now. I'm totally in. I'll do whatever it takes to get there.
Well, and imagine trying to approach a manufacturer overseas and be like, we need something in men's and women's, and we need 7 sizes of each. The size order you would have to place for them even to consider working with you, and then trying to describe exactly what you need for everything to be perfect for them to want to consider it. If you had taken that guy's advice on moving it overseas, there's a 0% chance you would have landed this, because it would have been similar to what everybody else is doing. Maybe you do men's and women, but with the size orders, you would have to have the multiple sizes and all of the tiny details that it takes. So it's like, screw that guy and his advice, because you're just thinking short-term profitability. And that's such an important detail to focus on. And it's something I try to be cognizant of. Is this decision being made for short-term profitability? If it is, the answer is usually no. Mm-hmm. And the answer that is going to lead to long-term success and profitability is usually not very obvious. And it doesn't seem to make sense to a lot of people because you want to do this the harder way. You want to do this so that's going to create more work from you. You're going to have to go out and hire people and build a team that can do this exactly to your specifications. This doesn't make any sense until you realize long term that these deals you're getting is because of the way you're doing it. And it wasn't the short-term profitability, and it wasn't the low-hanging fruit on the deals you potentially could have gotten at that point. And because of that, then when you send them that sample, I've always said the best deals are made when price is not the first point of the discussion.
Yeah.
Especially as a small business, if price is the first thing you're talking about with a potential customer, it's probably not going to be a good long-term partnership because you will never be able to compete with large manufacturers on price. You just won't. We can't. Any small business is not going to be able to compete with the largest people in that industry. So if the first thing you're talking about is price, I've literally told customers, if this is your number one concern is price, we shouldn't work together. Yeah. And that's tough sometimes because, oh man, high volume, they're going to order a lot. I'm a small business. I should be taking any business I can get. In the short term, maybe yes, but then long term, you realize you're compromising on all the things that made people want to, for us, consume our coffee or for you to wear your products in the first case.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the way you're stating it is almost like, no, of course we wouldn't do that. But I have to imagine it still was somewhat of a difficult decision to say no to those short-term opportunities as you go, well, they're really wealthy, so they must be really smart and they know what they're doing. You go, well, maybe the reason they're wealthy is because they find people doing cool things, make that short-term profitability, and then move on to the next thing.
True.
It's just like, it's so cool what you've done, and now you're launching with US Foods. What is that like when they finally say yes, and they are presumably placing that first huge order? What is then the next step after you get that proposal or the first order that now you have to turn around and be like, oh, you know, the really cool thing we designed for a while, now we have to go back and make this at scale. We did.
So that was we immediately started to build inventory and know what the numbers are. And then it's also aprons as well. And so there was a process of working with sewing teams so that there's enough sewers that can be skilled enough, because you don't want to all of a sudden be like from making 20 units to making, you know, several hundred units to like we're looking at the bigger picture. We could be doing thousands of units, but we want a skilled team. So we have to balance how we do this and ease stuff in, not give too much all at once and then have nothing to do, but keep a flow that's at the right rate so everybody's skilled in doing what they need to do. It takes a lot of thought and process into those pieces and doing it smart. And also, our company has zero investment. We built it ourselves. Like, this is it. There's been no outside money. We've done it with starting from those beginning orders and putting everything back in. So everything that we've done, we're able to do because we've planned it and done it that way.
And there's another reason you've got all these investors coming to you is because they go, you're completely self-funded. I bet I could break off a chunk of this equity for myself. And you just, the ability to say no along this way, you've got this business that you own and are doing. I'm sorry I interrupted, but that's crazy that you're doing what you've done. This is just over 3 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 3 years. It is crazy, honestly. Sometimes you stop and think about it for a second and you're like, that does blow my mind.
That's roughly when we started. And I'm like, the past 2 months are the first 2 months I felt where I was like, oh, okay, we might be okay. We might be going somewhere right. And to look what you've done is incredible. So, and just the intentionality you have and just even discussing how we're going to fulfill this order. I think a lot of people just say, well, let's just go 24/7 and fulfill it. And you want to build a skilled team so that as you grow and growth continues, that the people in place aren't being taught and trained in a slow way. And it seems like a lot of that stems from just your passion and intense focus on the quality, that you don't want someone making it in a way that is not going to live up to the standards of that original apron you made yourself.
Well, we don't want people feeling stressed out. We don't want them feeling like we're going to push them really hard and hurry up and why aren't you doing this fast enough? We want people to feel good in the environment. Like, we have cool things happen. Like today we're working with Bushel Boy. So we're making them some cool aprons, designing stuff with them. And like, Derek comes in with cases of tomatoes and strawberries and stuff for the whole team, and like cool things like that happen. So we get to have, like, working in this industry is amazing, and people are thoughtful and kind. So having those neat little things happen, and that people are feeling good about their environment, and it's like moving into a space now that has windows. I bought a whole bunch of like large green plants. So like we feel good in our space. I want to feel good when I'm there. Everybody should feel good in the space. And if you're sitting at a sewing machine for 6 or 8 hours a day, don't you want to feel great about that? I don't want anybody to feel like they're getting slammed. We do get really busy, and we do turn stuff around fairly quickly, but that a lot of that has to do with because of the skill level that, so now you've been doing these this much, and you have people that are, we're just going to do pockets, and we're going to trim them, and we know what we're doing. And so you have skilled people that know their lanes. And that's why with jackets, on our own investment piece, us as owners, we're making sample stuff in weird amounts, weird sizes, just to test the abilities. Like, we wanted them to, if we're going to need 5, 2X and then 4 smalls, like we were giving randoms, and we wanted to see skills. So we did a lot of QA in that process so that everybody's comfortable, and that when we're doing things down the road, we're going to have some all of a sudden, oh, we don't have enough of this, we have to hurry up and get some of those in there. We want people to be able to do that and know that you want to be confident, not only in yourself, but in the person doing we want them to be confident. So they're feeling good about what they're doing and how their approach is. And we've been really successful with that piece.
And as we're walking in today, I was having, like, my mind's blown about this U.S. Foods deal. And you're like, I'm working on something. I'm not going to ask. I know you can't talk about it today, but this is where I'm going to end the episode now, is that with even that, to me being like, that's most people, they go, I made it. Like, you're like, we're working on something that could make that look like just another deal for us. And so I'm just absolutely thrilled for what you've done. I don't talk to anyone that doesn't speak highly of you. And just the way you've been able to build this successful, growing business in a way that's so intentional and very thoughtful at every step of the way. I cannot wait to see what these next things you're working on are that might potentially make that look like something in the past. So that's where I'll end the episode today, and end it like I do every other episode and say, have a nice day.